Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Mark always thought he knew Lindsay well. They'd been married for 7 years, had a routine that worked, talked about almost everything, split bills and chores. For a long time, they lived like the world around them was silent. But one thing he always valued was respect. Fidelity, for him, was a line that couldn't be crossed. Something not up for debate. That's why that night became a turning point, even though it seemed like just another ordinary moment between husband and wife. They had picked a random movie on streaming. A drama with good reviews. The story revolved around a couple dealing with a crisis after the wife cheats on her husband with a coworker. The plot unfolded through apologies, lies, attempts at reconciliation, relapses, and finally an open ending, the kind that divides opinions. When the credits started rolling, Mark casually said, "I could never stay with someone who cheated on me." He said it naturally, like talking about what to order at a restaurant. But Lindsay took her time answering. She stayed quiet for a few seconds, watching the screen. Then she turned her head and said something that hit him harder than any other line in that movie: "People make mistakes. Sometimes one mistake doesn't define everything. You can forgive." Her tone was calm, almost instructional, but it set off an alarm inside him. Mark asked, "Do you think it's okay to cheat and just move on like nothing happened?" Lindsay replied that no one should be crucified for a weakness, and what mattered most was regret. The conversation began gaining weight. What was once just exchanging opinions turned into a tense debate. Mark argued that cheating breaks everything that supports love, and Lindsay insisted that adult relationships require maturity to handle flaws. The way she spoke sounded rehearsed. Like she had thought this through before. Like she was trying to justify something without directly admitting it. Mark stayed quiet for a few seconds, trying to understand what lay behind those words. Lindsay, sensing his discomfort, tried to soften things, saying it was just a different opinion and that they were talking about a movie, not real life. But the unease was already there. In the days that followed, Mark started paying more attention to his wife's reactions. Lindsay avoided closeness whenever he brought up anything sensitive. Sometimes, she changed the subject too quickly. Other times, she got upset over small things, as if her nerves were always close to the surface. She started leaving work later and taking longer to get home. She said she was overwhelmed, that her boss was on her case, that she needed time just for herself. Mark tried to believe her, but something inside him questioned every excuse. One night, he woke up in the middle of the darkness and noticed Lindsay in the kitchen, messing with her phone. He pretended to keep sleeping but memorized that image. Days later, she started staying up later, saying she needed to watch videos to relax, but kept her phone face down. Small behaviors, which once would have seemed irrelevant, began weighing heavily on suspicion. Mark wasn't a paranoid man. He never had the habit of snooping through phones, checking social media, or following his wife. But that conversation about cheating, combined with Lindsay's new attitude, felt more than coincidental. He started recalling loose phrases from her over the years. Coworkers she mentioned enthusiastically. Someone named Derek, who always sent messages at odd hours, whom she called funny but harmless. One day, while trying to decide what to do for the weekend, Lindsay suggested visiting a nearby town. Mark proposed another, even closer, with good restaurants. She refused too fast, saying she didn't have good memories from there. Her response was so automatic that he found it strange. He started questioning whether everything was really fine. He mentally reviewed his own actions, trying to remember if he did something that might have pushed her away. If some absence, some word spoken at the wrong time, could have caused any distance between them. But the more he thought, the more he felt the distance came from something she was hiding. Something that might have existed longer than he wanted to imagine. Mark started wondering whether their marriage was truly what it seemed. Whether that, he believed still existed. Deep down, the answer had already begun forming. But he wasn't ready to accept it yet. All he wanted at that moment was to discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Mark arrived home early because a meeting got cancelled. He parked in the garage, walked in, and immediately noticed a faint smell of smoke. In the living room, the fireplace was still warm. The fire had only recently been put out. The coals were beginning to cool, but heat still lingered, like a recent sign of something unresolved. Lindsay was upstairs. He heard footsteps in the bedroom, drawers opening, the zipper of a toiletry bag, like she was getting ready to go out. He went to the fireplace, crouched down, and saw bits of paper among the ashes. He carefully picked one up. It was a burned piece of a photograph. You could see part of a man's arm next to a light-colored dress. On the back, a scrap survived the fire, with a clear L at the end of the sentence. He recognized that handwriting. He stood there for a few seconds looking at the coals, saying nothing. Minutes later, Lindsay came downstairs dressed and ready, ran a hand through her hair, and said she needed to leave early for a work dinner. Mark wished her a good night and watched the door close with a sharp click. The silence left after she left was heavy. He went upstairs, opened his wallet, and quietly stored the piece of paper. His time of doubts was fading. The next day, he bought 3 small recording devices. He waited until nightfall and hid the gadgets when Lindsay fell asleep. One among books in the living room, another in the bathroom cabinet, and the third in an empty box in the laundry room. They were discreet, unnoticeable, nearly invisible. The plan was simple: listen. Let sound speak louder than her words. 2 days of recordings passed with nothing important. Kitchen noises, her watching videos, voice messages to her friend group, background music. But on the third day, at 9:47 p.m., the bathroom recorder captured something that changed everything. Her voice was clear, soft, yet full of intimacy. "Hi Derek. I thought about you all day today." Mark pressed the earphones tighter. Without realizing, he leaned back in his chair. "Of course I deleted the messages. Don't worry." Mark went to bed early, like always. Seconds of silence. Then she laughed. A laugh of someone completely at ease. "Yes, Saturday's still on. Same place as usual? That room downtown. Room 204, right?" She paused and finished, "My body is yours, Derek. You know that." Mark yanked the earphones off. He jumped up from the chair impulsively. Derek. The name wasn't unfamiliar. He was the coworker she occasionally mentioned, the funny guy at the office, the one who always helps when someone's late with a report, the one who jokes about everything. She laughed so much talking about him that Mark never suspected anything. He thought it was just typical workplace friendship. He went to his computer. Typed the full name, Derek Myers. He checked social media, LinkedIn, the company website. There he was. Friendly smile, blue blazer, a photo from a company event. And next to him, Lindsay, holding a wine glass, her head slightly resting on his shoulder in a pose far too casual for coworkers. The caption read, "Strong team, guaranteed laughs." Lindsay's like was the first one listed. He returned to the audio. Played it again, all the way through. She said she needed to be careful because Jessica, Derek's wife, had become suspicious. Mark closed his eyes, rubbed his forehead with both hands, and exhaled slowly. The feeling was a mix of anger, disappointment, and pain hard to describe. She called him love. Made plans. Had routines with another man. This wasn't just an affair. It was ongoing. They had a regular spot, a numbered room. A habit. Mark spent hours in silence that night. The recordings, the names, the images, her laughter, all of it formed a new reality. The woman he kissed every morning was living another life when he turned his back. A life that didn't include him. And in that moment, for the first time, Mark began accepting what he feared most: he had lost Lindsay a long time ago. He just hadn't realized it yet. Mark spent the entire night digging through everything he could find about Derek Myers. He read old posts, looked at party photos, analyzed social media comments, anything that might connect the two. The deeper he searched, the more he realized Derek and Lindsay's relationship was old and carefully built. She never told him about business trips with him, but Mark found an old post from Derek dated 7 months earlier showing a neighboring city, and in the reflection of a store window in the background, Lindsay's face. Small, but recognizable. A detail only someone very observant would catch. The next morning, without telling anyone, he took the day off. He typed Jessica Myers' name. He found the profile easily. Brown hair, serious gaze, few posts. A reserved woman. He sent a direct message saying he needed to talk about something important. She saw it but took time to reply. Only in the late afternoon did she accept the invitation. They agreed to meet at a discreet cafe outside the city center. When Mark arrived, she was already there. She didn't seem surprised. She greeted him with a short nod, as if she already knew why he was there. He got straight to the point. He told her he had discovered Lindsay's infidelity, mentioned Derek's name, and said he had recordings proving everything. Jessica sighed, pulled out a folder filled with documents and photos from her bag. She showed screenshots of messages Derek exchanged with Lindsay. Some were explicit. Others were full of codes and nicknames. Jessica also kept hotel receipts and one detail that twisted Mark's stomach: a photo of one of Lindsay's intimate garments, which she found in the trunk of her own husband's car. She explained that she had known everything for weeks but preferred to wait for the right moment to expose it. She was going through a quiet separation, gathering evidence, preparing to take everything to court. She said she didn't want scandals, just wanted to walk away with dignity and leave Derek no room to argue. Mark remained silent. It felt strange hearing someone else's pain echo so closely to his own. Two lives turned upside down by the same couple. He felt anger, shame, guilt for taking so long to see the truth. Jessica didn't cry. She spoke like someone who had cried enough and now only wanted to close a chapter. She handed Mark a copy of the evidence. Said it might be useful if he wanted to do the same. Before leaving, she touched his shoulder and said he could call if he ever needed to talk. But she also made it clear she didn't want to get involved in any drama. She was tired. He simply thanked her and stood there for a few minutes, staring at the papers. There was no room left for doubt. Now, all that remained was deciding what to do with it. He arrived home with dark circles under his eyes. Lindsay was on the couch watching TV, acting like nothing had happened. Mark walked in, went to the bedroom, and locked the door. He spent hours staring at the wall, mentally replaying everything he had heard, seen, and read. The recording of her saying, "My body is yours, Derek," echoed painfully in his mind. In the middle of the night, he went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and saw her phone light blinking on the table. It was a new message from Derek. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. That alone was enough. The next day, he waited for her to come home from work. Lindsay walked in with a calm expression, talked about traffic, mentioned something about a new coworker, and laughed to herself. Mark interrupted. He asked to talk. She was startled by his tone. They sat at the kitchen table. He started by saying he knew everything. That he had recordings, screenshots, testimonies. She tried denying it at first, saying he must be confused, that someone was trying to harm her. But as he mentioned dates, places, and names, she started trembling. She crossed her arms, looked away, and after a long silence, admitted there was no hiding it anymore. She confessed the affair with Derek. Said it started lightly, as a friendship that grew too close. She justified it by saying she felt invisible at home, that Mark seemed distant, too absorbed in work, and that Derek made her laugh and feel desired. Mark stayed quiet. She cried, but he saw no regret in her eyes. Just fear of losing the comfort of the life they had. What came next was worse. Lindsay admitted she also had encounters with 2 other co-workers. She said it wasn't intentional, but she got involved more than she should have and lost control. She said she felt ashamed, that she never planned anything, but let herself get carried away. She tried grabbing Mark's hand, but he pulled away. He stood up from the table, went to the bedroom, opened the closet, and started packing some things into a backpack. She followed him, pleading, saying she could change, that it was a mistake, that it was truly him she loved. He stopped, looked into her eyes, and said love can't survive hidden behind lies. He grabbed the backpack and left. He drove to a modest hotel and rented a room indefinitely. He spent the night wide awake, trying to understand how he got to that point. He woke up to a message from her asking for forgiveness. He didn't respond. He needed distance. What he felt wasn't just pain anymore, it was exhaustion. A desire to start fresh without carrying the weight of someone who destroyed trust like it was disposable. In the days that followed, he received more messages, including from people close to them. Some had suspicions, others were shocked by the news. Mark responded only when necessary. He didn't want advice or sympathy. He wanted silence. He wanted to stay away from the sound of her voice, the memory of her touch, the words she used with another man while sharing a home with him. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was the building of a new, parallel life where Mark didn't exist. And now he needed to rebuild everything from scratch, including his own identity. A few days had passed since Mark left home. The phone rang frequently, messages came constantly, but he ignored almost all of them. The only thing he did was work and try to fill his time with mechanical tasks. Anything was better than sitting and thinking. But the pain came uninvited anyway. Sometimes just seeing a couple walking down the street, hearing a song, catching a scent similar to hers. It was everywhere. In recent memories, in older ones, in the questions still repeating in his mind even when he pretended they weren't there. He tried convincing himself he had done the right thing. And he had. But that didn't make the process any less cruel. He returned home only once, briefly, to pick up documents and clothes. He had warned her he'd stop by quickly. When he entered, everything seemed quieter than before. Lindsay wasn't there. On the kitchen table, there was a folded letter with his name handwritten on it. For a moment, he considered throwing it away unread, but something stopped him. He picked it up, put it in his pocket, and finished gathering what he needed. When he opened the bedroom closet, he found his clothes still neatly organized, as if she were waiting for him to come back any time. He zipped the suitcase, looked around one last time, and left. Back at the hotel, sitting on the edge of the bed, he decided to open the letter. It was only 1 page. Lindsay wrote that she had requested a transfer to another department at work, that she was considering moving apartments, that she no longer saw any reason to stay in the same environment where everything happened. She said she felt shame, regret, that she never intended to hurt him that way. She ended by saying she understood if he chose to move forward without her, but that deep down, she truly hoped one day he could forgive her, even from afar. He slowly folded the letter and placed it back in his backpack. He didn't respond. He felt like any reply would only open new doors to conversations he no longer wanted to have. What they lived together was already buried. The problem was, grief doesn't disappear instantly. It comes in waves, flashes, silences too long to ignore. He started avoiding places they used to frequent together. Changed his route to work, stopped visiting the same restaurants. Even switched his gym schedule. It wasn't fear of running into her, it was exhaustion from reliving everything. One day, during lunch, a colleague commented on marriage and casually asked how Lindsay was doing. Mark simply said they had separated, without giving details. The colleague fell silent and changed the subject. He realized that kind of conversation would probably become common for a while. And he was ready for that. He owed nobody explanations. One night, while returning to the hotel, he parked his car in front of a park. He stared at the city lights in the distance. He remembered bringing Lindsay there for the first time, early in their relationship. She was afraid of the dark, held his hand tightly. She said he was her safe harbor. And he believed her. They spent years trying to build a life around that promise. Now it sounded like a cruel joke. What hurt the most wasn't the betrayal itself, but breaking everything she once said. Knowing that, at some point, she looked him in the eyes and lied without hesitation. The following week, he scheduled a meeting with a lawyer. He spoke little but was straightforward. He said he wanted to resolve everything quickly. He was willing to give up things he once insisted on keeping. He didn't want to fight over furniture, cars, possessions. He wanted peace. The lawyer understood and started organizing the paperwork. When it came time to inform Lindsay, she responded with few words. She said she understood and would sign everything without contesting. That officially marked the end. A clean end, but full of invisible scars. On a random Sunday while having coffee alone, he received a message from an unknown number. It was from Lindsay's mother. She said she was sorry for what happened, that she still considered him family, and despite everything, wished him happiness. Mark responded politely. It felt strange receiving kindness from that side. But it was also a reminder that even when someone fails, the world keeps turning. People get hurt, others learn, some leave. And some are left with the wreckage. That same day, he decided to go for a walk. He left his phone at home, put on a light jacket, and walked for almost an hour. For the first time in a long time, he took a deep breath and felt something inside him begin to shift. There was still pain, still uncertainty, but there was also a new space opening up. A space where he could rebuild himself. Far from her voice. Far from broken promises. A space that belonged to him alone. And it was there, sitting on a random bench, watching people come and go, that he understood something simple yet profound: love needs to come with truth. When truth leaves, love becomes just a painful memory. And sometimes, to save yourself, you have to accept that you can't save the other person. Suspicious of your wife or daughter-in-law? Don't go through what we saw in the video. Check the link in the comments and get the ebook with valuable tips and investigator-approved sites to clear your doubts. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.